So simpler. Let's find it in our instruments right here. I love simpler. It's capable of so much, you know. You can make anything with it. It's you know, there's sampler as well, which is sort of like the grown-up version, maybe you might say. It's got a few more features to it, but there are some things about simpler that make it worth using, even if you have sampler. For one, you can warp clips and you can warp your samples. So normally the way a sampler works is when you drop a sample in there, it pitches it by changing the speed of the sample. So faster, higher pitched samples will get played back faster, and lower pitched samples get played back slower. So if you play a higher key, you get that high pitch kind of sped up sound, and lower, slowed down. But you can warp things so that it maintains the timing. So even when you transpose it with the keys, you still keep the timing. So it's really nice for like rhythmic stuff. Um, Also, you have a little more control over like the looping and the length. You can move the looping area around a lot that you can't really do in samplers easily. So it can be kind of useful for like changing the looping position of the sample, the start points and stuff. So there are some good reasons to use simpler over sampler. And you know, got the one-shot mode. It's got a nice slicing mode, which we can always get into. So maybe like another time, like talking about sampler would be cool too. Sampler's probably the thing I use the most in live, the instrument I use the most. You might have guessed based on some of the packs. So let's see. Let's put something in here. I got these rhythm drums right here. This is the download for the club this month. I'll bring it up here just so you can see. Have you guys all gotten the rhythm drums pack by now? You should have got the email to download it. So I used the Electron Analog Rhythm to make all of these samples. And I did like this randomization process where I used a Max for Live device to just randomize the parameters of the rhythm. So there's this software component to the analog rhythm called Overbridge that controls like all the parameters on the device itself. And I was able to just randomize them and make all of these different samples. And it was kind of fun to do because I got a lot of stuff that I probably wouldn't have done myself if I was actually making the sounds. And then a lot of cool, like regular drum sounds too, you know. So I think maybe like the toms might be a good place to start if I'm gonna see if we find something like very tonal. That might work. Let's drop this one in here. So this tom is now inside our simpler. And it's that easy to add things to simpler. You just drop it right on there. Actually, too, if you are, you know, in live, if you haven't changed your defaults and you just drop a sample on a MIDI track, it puts it right into a simpler for you. So you don't even have to load the device inside the in the track. You can just drop the sample. So if I play the note C3, it will play the sample back at its normal pitch. And that's what that drum sounds like, right? And then if I'm in classic mode here, now my browsers keep playing that, but suddenly it becomes a playable instrument. Play it really high. We're playing the tom like a musical instrument right now. So we've got a little bit of control, like of where the sample starts to play back from. Like right here, this is our starting point. Where our sample goes, it'll play from here. So we could change, like, maybe we don't like that initial attack. Because if you listen, there's kind of like almost like a click. It's meant to be like the skin of the drum getting hit. So I could always move that. And we get like a much softer, and kind of depending on where you land, you get a little bit of a click or something smooth. We got that going on. We can even loop it. So if I click the loop button now this kind of blue area is a looped area. So we can change the start point of the loop with the loop control here. We can change the length of the loop, so how long the looping section is. And we can even add a little fade so that it smooths it out. So right now, if I play this, it's looping. And we can change what part gets looped, how long. And if we want to get rid of some of those clicks, we can add some fade and that smooths it out a little. Right now, you know what? The fun thing about Simpler is that you can expand the view. So you click this little triangle here, and now you get this nice expanded view here. So you can really see the sample nice and big. And it also gives you access to the other page of parameters. Normally, you have this tab and then this tab, but you can pop out the sample tab right there. That makes it a lot easier to work. So now I can see some of my other stuff here. So we've got right here, like once you put a sample in, now you're basically doing synthesis. Instead of a waveform, you're using a sample. So we did a class a while back about subtractive synthesis. And now once we go inside Simpler, we've got all of those types of things. You've got your envelope for amplitude, which is your volume. You've got a filter, which we can turn on here. You've got LFOs for modulation. We've got a pitch envelope as well. So we got a lot of those normal kind of synthesis things going on. So right now, if you look, my release on my amplitude envelope is really high. That's why when I play a note, it kind of lasts forever. But if I bring this down a little, something like a second or so, we've got basically a playable synth. And we might play around with these looping parameters to figure out like what part we want to loop so we get the smoothest sound, how much of a fade we want. So it changes it quite a lot. You get almost like this rhythmic thing going on, and now it smooths out a little. Maybe I want to make it into more of a pad. I can play with the attack and give us a longer attack. So let me go over here to the warping parameter. Just so what you might notice is when I play these really high notes, the sample plays back so fast, we get like a different rhythm to the looping. And when I play it low, it plays back so slow that it's another rhythm. So when I start playing like chords, there's a lot of different rhythms happening, which can be really cool. Sometimes I like that a lot. But if I don't want that, I can click the warp button here. And now everything will play back at the same speed. The lowest and the highest all play at the same speed. And then you can play different notes that all have the same kind of movement to them. And you got your different warping parameters. Beats is really good for drum beats. Tones, more for, you hear the difference already when I change the warp mode. This is beats. This is tones. We got some parameters we can play with on tones. The grain size. We've got texture. And again, these parameters do a lot to the overall sound. That's almost very glitchy. Repitch is not going to do much when I play different keys. It's going to change with the BPM. That's just how repitch works. It deals with the BPM. And then you've got your complex and complex pros, the more sophisticated warping algorithms. One thing worth noting, though, the complex pro and complex, especially complex pro, it's very high on CPU. So I'm only holding down 3 notes and we're at 40%. So that is certainly a consideration. I'm kind of getting like audio crackles. I kind of like the way beats sounds for this particular sound. The only drawback about looping things in warp mode is you don't get that fade. So you get this, like, sometimes you get the clicking. So that's just one thing to be aware of. Probably for this sound, I would turn warping off. So, this is all within classic mode. We'll get to the other modes in a second. We got our filter, like we said before. Turn that down, and we can smooth this out a little bit by reducing some of that high frequency content. We can choose different types of filters, so I can do like a high pass here if I like. Band pass. We got the notch filter. And we've even got the morphing kind, so we can morph between different filter types. And we've got different styles of filters too. So not all of them have the warping, but we can go to these different analog modeled filters. I always like the MS-21, the Korg MS-20 style filter. This is, I believe, a Moog, and they're modeled after different things. They have slightly different sounds, but they come with a drive control, so you can get a little grit and distortion. The resonance, and you got the slopes. Filter envelope, just like you would expect on any kind of subtractive synthesizer. So we can move this filter over time. I can turn up the amount of the filter. And now we'll hear the filter move. It's kind of going. Turn it all the way up so we really hear it. So just don't forget, we started with that. And we've turned it into this. This like really kind of neat sounding pad. We've got our LFO, and we can apply that to volume or pitch or panning or filtering. So if I want to modulate the filter a little bit, I can crank that up. Strangely goes to 24. I don't really understand the logic of some of the values on these. This goes to 24, this goes to 72 and negative 72. And I'm not really sure. This goes to 100%. But anyway, now I'm modulating the filter with this LFO. I can put that on the volume for like a tremolo type sound. And maybe for this parameter, I'll keep the volume like that. It sounds kind of cool. And I'll just turn the attack up, which will sort of fade in this modulation. So it'll start out at like nothing, and over the course of almost 5 seconds, we start getting that movement. You can change the waveform. It can be a lot more drastic with a square wave. We do it all the way, we'll get like silence in between. kind of neat. I might stick with the sine wave for that. I'll give it a little filter just for the fun of it. And that can be synced to tempo too. So if you want it to happen in like 16th notes, you can do that, or you can have it in just regular time. So that's, kind of the basics of simpler. There's also the pitch envelope. I didn't talk about that, but that's how we can change the pitch over time. So if I turn this on, now the pitch envelope is activated. We just have to now set the amount. So if I start this up at, say, 12, it will, so this is the place is going to, so the shape of the volume of the pitch will start way up here, and over the course of 600 milliseconds, it will come down. So it starts pretty high. I'll make it a little slower so you really hear it. So it's dropping in pitch. We can make it much more drastic. And we can go into negative values, make it come up. Maybe we'll do a little bit of that. Maybe I'll... a little more attack. Yeah, we can turn that off. It's just another way to give a little movement to your sound. So those are like kind of the basics of how to use it. I'm going to duplicate this track just so, because I kind of like that sound, so we'll keep that. We can wonder if maybe I get like a much different sound. I wonder if any of our snares, probably the kicks are a good option for, they have more of like a tonal thing. Let's see how this sounds. Oh, I didn't do something very important. So I'm playing here, let's see. I'm playing a C right now. We want to make sure that we're actually getting a C. So I'm going to turn off the pitch envelope for a second, and I can bring in the tuner, and hopefully it'll pick up the pitch. So I'm playing a C, but I'm getting like a B type note. Let's turn off the LFO too, because that's making it wobble some. So we're like somewhere between B and B flat. So we want to tune that up, and we can use the transpose and the detune control here. So I'll just raise this one until we kind of get into the green area. There's a little pitch movement because this is a drum sound, so it's not so steady. But I'm playing an E, and I'm roughly getting an E back. That's a good way to tune things. Just use the tuner and then play the note. I'm playing a C, and I want to make sure I'm getting a C. You can see it starts out actually a little sharp, so maybe to compensate for that, I might drop it down just a couple cents here. Yeah, you can do this to taste. I think if you're off by just a few, single digits, that's acceptable. But yeah, now we're in tune, so this will play nicely with other instruments. Will we put a kick drum in here? So let's see what we got here. So right now I'm looping the tail end of this, and it's kind of a neat effect. This is a kick drum. I could move this loop area a little bit so we get more of the actual sound. If use the length for that. And if we put it over here, we get that kind of funny plucky sound going on. And they're all different speeds. So if I play the low notes, we get that pulsing. Play the high note, we get that. So maybe I decide to turn on warping. I might have to make some adjustments in that case. This way they all have the same looping time. Lower the attack. It's a weird sound, but kind of fun. And you can hear the movement on the filter. We'll turn that LFO back on. We might. All kinds of weird stuff. Oh, we got someone else. Let's let him in. Coma Boy. Cool. A weird sound, but kind of fun. I think this sound would be cool. And again, I should actually probably do the tuner. So let's bring that back in. Let's spell it right. I'm using a shortcut that saves so much time. If you are on a Mac, it's Command F. If you're on a PC, it's Control F. And that brings me right into the search bar, and I can just start typing in tuner. And by the time I get to the end, tuner pops up right here. I can press my down arrow and enter, and it's right inside my track like that. That is a lot faster than trying to go in here, okay, and then like, where's tuner? It'll save you a few seconds, and over time, those seconds add up. So I'm playing a C here, and I'm getting practically an E flat, so I'll just drop that a few semitones, and then detune it so we get into the green. And we're kind of hovering around there. I think this sound would be cool with a little bit of delay or maybe some reverb to kind of smooth it out a little. So I'll drop the delay in here. Turn off sync. Maybe a reverb even. Pull that dry wet down. Bring the filter down a little. And again, like the amount of pitchiness we get. Play around with this a little bit. Or even turn off the warping if you prefer. It's all a matter of experimentation, really. I think I'm kind of enjoying that weird texture, and those pops are kind of cool. It's like, I guess, an artifact, but it kind of gives the sound its character. I'm sure it would change drastically on the different tones. Is much different. There you go. So that's a matter of finding what you like. The Tomcat sample pack. I think that's isn't that a synth by might be Alesis, or I forget. Coma Boy, welcome to the chat here. I see you have arrived. Good to see you. So nice. So we talked about classic in a lot of detail. Let's look at just some of those other functions, those other modes. So one shot is probably what you would use if you were actually putting drum samples in, as we are. So if I put this in here, one-shot mode will just play the whole sample, because since it's a drum, you usually want to just hear the whole sample, hit the key and it plays. And that's what we get here. As I play higher notes, I do get those different pitches. But it just plays the sample all the way from the beginning all the way to the end. And you can adjust how far it plays with these flags. You can have it start later if you want. Move it back here. One nice little thing, some of the functions change a little bit. I can expand this too so you can kind of see. We don't really get our amplitude envelope anymore. We just get a fade in and a fade out. So I'm like, the drum is fading in or it's fading out. Fade out can be really handy if you've got like a noisy sample, maybe with like a lot of background noise, and you don't want it to just stop afterwards. You know, a good example was lo-fi. What is that? It's just a pack I released not too long ago. Let me see if I can find it. But I did these sounds with my micro cassette recorder. Here we go. So it's going to be in here. Hot tip, you can take your Ableton Live sessions, like this is a session file, rather than just open it and lose it and everything. I can just take this whole thing and drag it right in. And now I've just added it to my project. And furthermore, on top of that, we can expand the session and we can just drag in the one track we actually want, which in this case is this one. So I'm going to get rid of the rest of these guys. And maybe maybe what I'll do actually, just what would make more sense, is to grab the actual sample. So yes, let's do this. So I have, this is the kick. Let's just put this in here instead of that kick drum. So here we have a bunch of sounds, drum sounds. I think these are 808s. An 808 drum kit recorded to the micro cassette, starting there. So I have the little micro cassette recorder right up to the speaker and I'm just recording. But you hear all the background noise. The point I'm trying to make here is if I say want to isolate this drum sound, whatever we have here, you'll notice it's just playing through the whole sample because all I did was press that note once, and that's what one-shot mode will do. So let's turn fade it. So there's so much tape hiss on this particular sound. And then it just cuts off. So if I want to get rid of that, fade out is really nice. It sounds a little more natural. And there we have our one shot, just playing like that. And it's a little bit cleaner than something like this. That just kind of cuts off. Sometimes I like to use simpler like this with one sample and one shot and just make percussive stuff with the one sample. You're like, there's some like kind of like weird, like kind of, these sound almost like little glitches when I start playing them really high. Sometimes that makes like cool little percussive stuff. And I bet our rhythm drums probably sound kind of cool like that. Something like that. And if I start playing these really high, it's just like another option for your percussive needs. One shot can be really helpful too if you have a beat. So let me just type in beat, see if I can find a beat sample. All right, that'll work. So I've got this beat here. I can just cue that beat like that. And maybe just also to illustrate the warp mode and how interesting this is now. I can play it at its normal speed, and it's all warped. It's playing in, you know, you can see the bars here. So this would fit right in time with my track's BPM. Something in there. Here we go. We got some information from when I dragged that track in here, playing back. I actually don't think I need that anymore. So this maintains my beat no matter what pitch I play it back at. This is a much higher pitch. I'll play it much lower. And if I'm in classic mode too, it works the same way. So, but instead of just pressing the key once, now I can hold it down. Let's turn on loop. And a fun thing you can do, like in this, we can just take like a MIDI clip here. I can draw in a note here. Just drag that out for the whole duration of the bar. I must have a very long release time going. Yeah, bring that down. So I can play this. Turn that off for a second. And if I layer in a couple notes, they're all playing together nicely. Put another one way up here. So this is just to demonstrate that if you have a loop going on in here, you can transpose it around in different pitches with the warp mode on. So if I have like a melodic loop here. No beats. All right, let's put that in there. So here's the original pitch. So this is just some silly little loop made with a pocket operator. I can play it here, and I can basically change the chord progression if I want. And it stays in time. And that's if I have classic mode on. It'll just keep playing while I hold down the key. I can change notes. So you can take, I wonder if I have a song I can show this for. You can do like some really interesting remix type stuff. I don't have a ton of stuff on here, but let's pick something. Aerosmith, say. What would be a good song? Will it let me drop you in there? Okay, so we get some Aerosmith going in here. All right, so let's grab that little beginning of Back in the Saddle. So I'm just gonna find the very beginning of it. We'll call it that. And let's... All right, then we'll grab the end, pull it all the way down here. And we're just going to use that one little bit. So we've got... Right? We can... What we can do now is if we click warp as one bar, if we've decided like that sounds like one bar of music, 2, 3, 4, right? We can click, right now it's not going to be in time with our BPM. But if we click warp as one bar, we're telling live, this is one bar of music. So time it. And we can take this little intro to Aerosmith's Back in the Saddle and make like a new chord progression out of it. And you'd probably experiment with like what warp mode you want. Probably for a full song. I mean, you can have like all sorts of fun, like taking like chord progressions or just like a single like bar of like I'm doing here, like just this little bit of this song and like make a new chord progression out of it. So if you wanted to do like all kinds of crazy weird remixes, you can just change songs around like that, kind of steal like a groove of a song and make it into your own kind of thing. Yeah, it does sound like a spy movie a little bit. This particular part is funny. And then who knows, right? We can right click this. We can reverse the sample. I should have cropped it first because it's going to reverse the entire sample. And now that part we had over here was there. So you can, once you have what you want, if you click crop, it will just cut out everything else. So this is all I have now. It's a little bit faster to work with. And it's when you reverse things, it happens faster. But now we got the sample backwards. It's starting to sound like a little less recognizable now. Filter things out a little bit, maybe put on a little crunch. That's like, you know, it doesn't really sound too much like that Aerosmith song anymore. Something totally new. So that is a really fun way to play around with simpler, I think, is with the warp mode and things that have like rhythms and progressions like that. How's it going? Any questions? I haven't asked that. I'm in simpler. I see the question here. This is simpler. We're talking about simpler today. Maybe on another one we can talk about sampler. Sampler's my favorite. Simpler has some of these cool functions like the warping and the one-shot mode are really nice. There's maybe I can demonstrate one other thing I like a lot about simpler. So right, I made this instrument earlier. I like those like pops. It sounds like water to me or something. But let's just say I select all of these devices and I right click and I make it into a group, which makes it into an instrument rack. And I'll show our macros. Such a fun feature of Simpler is that you can map the loop times to knobs like this. And that allows you to like play some notes. And kind of scroll through the sample. Let me see if how this affects it. So I have snap on, that's why it's kind of jittery here, but if I turn snap off, now I've got a smoother. So what I'm doing is just manipulating these loop length and start points. I can turn warp back on now, I guess. If I have a small enough loop. It's so funny. So I'm just zooming in so you can see. If you get really tight, it's kind of like granular synthesis, really. Don't forget, this is a kick drum sample. I'm just holding down 2 notes. Ooh, I like that a lot. So there's a lot of fun sounds in there when you start playing around with the looping times. So you can't do that in Sampler. You don't have the ability to map those in the same way. So there are a couple like little workarounds you can do. There's an auxiliary envelope that allows you to play with that a little, but it's kind of not the same. This is just really cool. You can make all kinds of weird noises in there. That's a fun little game to play. The only thing I don't think I really went over was the slicing parameter mode. So maybe we'll invite Aerosmith back into our little game here, and just gonna kind of try to get like roughly. We'll do kind of what we did before. Let's bring this back here, and I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3. This looks like about 4 bars. So I'm just gonna click this. Warp is 4 bars. It's playing this. So if I go into slicing, I'm gonna crop this as well. Maybe not yet. I won't crop it yet. Do slicing mode. So when I go to slicing mode now, it chops up the sample and puts each little section onto individual keys on your keyboard, or in this case, I'm using push. And now I'm just playing little slices of it. And I know you won't be able to see this, but on push, on the display, it gives me the readout of everything going on in the sample window on Simpler too. So if you have a push 2, using Simpler is really nice because you can see the waveform. I don't think that's going to be able, you'll be able to see that the way the camera is right now. But it's kind of cool that you can just see what's going on. So we've got a couple different modes here. We're in trigger mode, which means it'll trigger the whole loop. Gate mode will play it for as long as I hold down the pad. So if I just tap it, that's a lot like the clip modes. Trigger in clip mode will give you it'll just start playing the clip. Gate mode will only play the clip as long as you're holding the clip down, the play button down. So you have a little choice of how you want these to play back. If you want the whole slice to play, you can transpose this with this control now. Or we just leave it where it is for now. And we got a couple different slice modes. We got transient, where live is looking for the transients, the hits inside that sound. So if I just put this inside here and I click warp, and then we look, these little arrow markers, these little white markers, gray markers here, are the transients. They just indicate that there's a peak in volume all of a sudden. And a lot of times those have to do with put this back up, I guess. Those have to do with like drum hits or anything kind of percussive. And live will look for those, especially when you're warping, because you're trying to find the percussive stuff and all the beats. So you can use these to figure out where they are. In this case, I'm using the transients to slice. So it's putting little slice markers wherever it detects a transient. And there's a sensitivity control to this. So, and I'll get to that in 1 second. So if I turn the sensitivity down, it changes the slicing. We don't get as many. So something like this Well, I have fewer slices. And that one's very long. But that one's very short. So playing around with that helps a lot. The playback mono means I can only play one at a time. If I change that to poly, we get as many voices as we want. So I can play them all together. Retrigger is a feature you'll see on a lot of different devices. Simpler has it, Sampler has it. It's right here too. All Retrigger means is if I play the same note, like we'll hear on this is a longer slice. We'll make it even longer right now. If I play that while it's still playing, I play it again, it just starts the sample over. But if I turn off Retrigger, it will just layer another one on top. And you kind of hear them adding up. If I do this with Retrigger on. That's a good thing to know. Probably most notably if you're using cymbals. So let's get a cymbal sample. What do we get? That's going to be a beat. There we go. There's a cymbal. So if I play this cymbal and I play it more than once real fast, it cuts it off. And if you know how a cymbal actually sounds in real life, it continues to ring no matter how many times you hit it. It just keeps ringing. So this is kind of unnatural sounding. But if I turn on or turn off Retrigger, they get to ring out nicely. It'd probably work. You really notice it if I can get like a... That'll be more obvious because it's like a real sample. It's not a drum machine. Did I not drop that? Go on. Oh, you're a rack. You're not a sample. Okay. You won't go in there. So let's see. Let's get a cymbal sample, not a rack. Well, there's got to be something. Well, this one will work. It's long, right? So that's kind of what I'm looking for. They're all ringing out. And you hear it especially if I change the note. And that's how a cymbal really works. They continue to ring and like it sort of adds up. If I turn Retrigger on, they cut each other off, and you'll hear it when I play the different notes especially. Well, nope, that's not true because I'm playing different notes. It happens when you're playing the same note. If you play different notes, they'll all ring out. That's when you're playing the same note, which is probably what you're going to do when you're playing a cymbal. You're not going to normally do things like that, even though that does sound kind of cool, but it doesn't sound natural. So that's just a long-winded explanation of Retrigger. So we don't have to just slice by... Well, before I change that, we have the sensitivity control, but I could also just double-click in here and add my own transients. So I'm just adding new slices in there myself. So you can just double-click and add your own slices, and you can have as many as you want. You put them right where you think they should be. There is beat. So beat slices your sample based on the division you select here by beat. So we have quarter notes. That makes it nice and easy to play it back, like rhythmically. Right? We can go by like all different kinds of divisions, eighth notes. We can make it bars, so we can... And there's all these different choices that tells you how it gets sliced. We can have the polyphonic playback again, so we can play 2 at the same time. Or in this case, 14 if we wanted to. We can play 14 notes. And we got the retrigger again. Then there is region, which will divide the sample up into an equal number of regions. In this case, we have 8, but 8 happens to coincide with the bars. It's just the same kind of divisor or multiple. But we can change it to have like 11 slices. And these aren't necessarily tied to the grid. So you might know I want to chop this into 11 different slices. That's region. And then manual, you can just decide, all right, we're going to put a slice here. And every time you do a slice, if you see on my push, it creates a new pad. So we can put as many slices as we want, wherever we want. Which is kind of cool. And those are really that's pretty much it, I think, for the slicing mode. Slicing mode is really cool if you're into chopping samples up so that you can have all these different things on your keyboard or your push or your launch pad or whatever you use. You can have just the different parts of a sample all sliced on individual keys. Whereas one shot will just take the one sound and pitch it around. It'll play the whole sample. And classic allows you to play one at a time, and they will last based on the ADSR envelope, the amplitude envelope. And I think that's the features of Simpler. Fun fact about Simpler and Sampler, really, is you can take, so say you're working in Simpler and I don't know, we made this instrument, say, we can always right-click on the title bar and convert that to a sampler. And then once inside Sampler, we got access to all the other features in Sampler. Sampler allows you to put more than one sample in there. It has more controls, more modulation, some MIDI stuff going on that we can get into some other time. But it's a good thing to know that you can switch back and forth. Only catches when you go back to Simpler, while you will still maintain anything, even the features that are only in Sampler will still kind of live in your Simpler. It changes it to this multi-sample mode, and you can't really edit the sample as much anymore. You see I lose those different modes over here. So it is kind of cool that you can convert things back to Simpler and back to Sampler. But when you go from Sampler to Simpler, it changes the behavior of Simpler. You lose out on some of the controls. But I think, as far as I can tell, Simpler, when you have converted from Sampler, it is Sampler with just kind of like a different skin on it. So it's kind of neat. So I'm just going to undo that so we can get back to Simpler the way I had it before. Jack, okay. Thanks for showing up. I don't know if I missed you already, but good to see you, and have a great night. So let's say, Tom, thank you. Tuner reverse sample. Yeah. Reversing the sample is so cool. I mean, throw anything inside a Simpler, right click and reverse the sample, and you've just got something cool to play with. Even like this cymbal, right? Like one of those like really common effects in a lot of, especially like dance, techno, EDM music, is to just right click, have the reverse cymbal during your builds. Every and then this is gonna take a long time, but you'll hear that effect. And there you got that little bit of a riser. You might move it a little closer, and you can play it at different pitches. I could play a whole bunch of these at once. Now they're all playing at different speeds, though, which wasn't what I wanted. That wouldn't work for my build, right? But if I warp them, they all kind of go at the same time. It's going to be really handy for things like that, for making these sorts of things. Or just, stuff backwards sounds cool. So I love just flipping things around to see what it sounds like. Sometimes you get cool sounds that way by reversing things. Regular real world instruments. Yeah, yeah, right. Sweet Emotion has that. Yeah, that has that reverse symbol. Or it's, yeah, like during the is that cool sound. So that's one way you can do it a lot easier than going onto your reel-to-reel tape machine, flipping your tapes over, recording your cymbal, then flipping them back over. That's a bit of a process if you've ever had to do that. It's fun, but it's a lot easier to do inside of Live when you can just right click and it reverses the sample. P.S. Just side note, if you're not aware, and you have a sample like one of our rhythm drums, say I have this drum in here and I want to reverse it, you can just, as long as your keyboard shortcuts are off, if you just press R, it reverses it for you really fast and easy. You could also just go in here and click Rev, and that's essentially the same thing. But I love the R shortcut in here. It just saves so much time chopping things up. You're making little weird patterns out of drums. Pressing R, reverse it real quick. The other fun one is if you hold Shift on the edge, you see that changes. You can do a warp right inside there. You don't have to go inside the clip view. You can time stretch things. Listen to what that kick drum starts sounding like. Reversed kick drum becomes kind of like, I don't know, some sort of end of the world stuff. Yeah, and the question is if this will be available to watch later. Yep, I'm recording it and I will put it into YouTube, and I'll put it into the Discord so that everyone can see it and watch it if you missed it. Rewatch it if you loved it. And it'll be available for you. So I think that's about going to do it. Did I miss anything? Do you have any questions about any of this stuff? Any simpler things I might have not covered or missed? No? All right, then. So I know some of you are doing January. We have 10 more days to go, right? Including today, which I haven't done yet, and now it's 9:20. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. I'll figure something out. But we'll make another jam. If you haven't started January, if you haven't been doing it, there's no reason you can't start now. And if you do, you'll have some new music that you wouldn't have made ordinarily. And I do find that like right now it's 9:20, and I really have to think about going to bed at a reasonable hour. Getting up early for work, so I have a serious time crunch on my hands, which forces me to work really fast. So I don't have the time to be like all critical about my ideas and judgmental. I sort of have to just like blast them out. If that chord's cool, all right, the speed's fine. It's good enough, and it's a real good exercise in not being so judgmental in the early stages of the process. I think when you're first creating ideas, um, if you start getting too critical too early, I know what it happens to me all the time. I start getting critical, and then all of a sudden, this thing I was excited about, I suddenly feel bad. I don't like it. A lot of doubt creeps in. But when I know I have to produce something, and I also want to get to bed at a reasonable time, um, that pressure kind of makes me not worry about it so much. And you know, uh, the fact that I'm doing it just about every night. So far, it's been every night for me. If I have a couple days that aren't so good, who cares? It's no big deal. I did the exercise of trying to make music and trying to come up with ideas and bring them to life. And even if the actual idea itself is garbage, the practice of doing that exercise is still there. So you're still working on something, and it's not for nothing. So let's see. Oh, you're going to destroy your music. Cool. Nice. So I'm really happy you guys made it out tonight. It was a lot of fun to talk about this stuff, and it's got me excited about just all these things, making fun samples. I'll probably polish off these sounds, like maybe just turn them into like racks with some nice macro controls, and I'll put them up for the club so you guys can have them if you want to use them in your own productions. And be a couple instruments anyway. But I thank you all for coming out.
Thanks, Brian. That was awesome.
Cool.
Have a good one.
I'm glad it helped. Use Simpler. Have fun. Put anything in there. It doesn't matter what you put in there. Like, you just never know what you're going to get. I've been
Definitely
using these samplers in live like so much for, I don't even know, 10 years. And it's still a surprise. Like, it's always magical. It's always exciting. So give it a shot. See what happens.